Code of conduct.
Heavy is the head that wears the crown. I put in extra work that just can't be found. I took the sword out the stone, wasn't a thing. Look me in my eyes cause I'm a king. Look me in my eyes cause I'm a king. God made me punch in accurate numbers. My castle won't crumble. What I tackle will fumble. I've been a leader when they ain't see it, but now my feet is up. According to me, royalty didn't end with King Tut. Crown on my head, clouds is at my legs. Big says sky is the limit. I look down on the ledge. I push the bar like I'm opening a cell. Hands in my cookie jar, you won't come out with a single nail. I need all of mine. The weight of my shoulders won't fit on a scale. What's a king to a giant? Well, Goliath fell. Even if we playing chess, dog, this king can't be checked. I make all my moves on the board. I invented my steps. I'm a king, the blood of a ruler. I feel like Mansa Musa. Make your squad disappear like landing by the Bermuda. Triangle, look at it from my angle. I'm a king, the closest thing to being one of God's angels. I'm a king. Heavy is the head that wears the crown. I put in extra work that just can't be found. I took the sword out the stone, wasn't a thing. Look me in my eyes cause I'm a king. Look me in my eyes cause I'm a king.
Shout out to Hooli. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. This is the Code of Conduct of the King podcast. I am your host, JSpenceTheKing, and I am excited to just to have the show tonight in general. I have a very special guest joining me shortly, Mr. Sal Capaccio of WGR 550. He is the Buffalo Bills beat reporter, and he's all of our favorite member of WGR 550. So I'm excited to talk to Sal tonight. We're going to talk a little bit about the dress rehearsal that we saw over the weekend. We're going to talk about all the issues. I don't think it was Josh. I don't think Josh is a problem at all. I think if this is the version of Josh that we're going to get for the season, I think Josh looked decisive. I think, look, you're going to have some people that look at it as Josh is, has some happy feet going on where he kind of tried to get out the pocket too soon. I looked at it as if the line didn't protect him for the amount of time that they should have. So, I guess it just depends on how you look at it. I think the offensive line needs some help, and I think it's a very serious issue. I think right tackle, as much as I love Spencer Brown, I think everybody knows I'm one of the guys that like a pound table for Spencer Brown. And last year I was saying that, I think it's his back injury. He can heal up and be the guy that we're looking for. I don't know if I think that that's the case. After seeing him this past weekend, I just don't know if that's the case. I'm hoping that it's the case. I'm hoping that, this was even overall, the offensive play or the line for the play for the offensive line just seemed terrible. And I'm hoping that this was just something that where it's like, okay, it's the first real live action that they got to see against different team. So with them being able to, get up to speed, is like, okay, this was the first real action. So we're just not all together. And I'm hoping that what we saw this past weekend is nothing like what we see coming up once the season starts. And I think for the most part, this team has played enough for me to have that confidence and that comfortability. But I am nervous. I won't lie. That offensive line, we have to do better. We just have to do better. And there's some options. There's a trade that Greg Topsett from Cover One is trying to push with the Carolina or the Arizona Cardinals. There's a free agent, somebody that the Buffalo Bills are familiar with because they drafted him, and Jason Peters. There's some options out there that we could do some things and to get some people in here to help with our depth or just overall with the starting positions on the offensive line. The other observation for me over the weekend, last week, I was excited about the run game. I thought James Cook looked good. I thought the other running backs looked pretty good as well with that line. This week, again, I don't know. I don't know if it was just the line for me or if I don't know. I'm looking, obviously everybody's fantasy drafts are coming up and everybody wants James Cook to step up now and be the guy. And the thing is, I think James Cook absolutely can step up and be the guy. I think he wants to step up and be the guy. I just don't know if I have the faith and the trust in the Buffalo Bills as an organization to run the ball through James Cook enough for him to really be that RB fringe RB1 that everybody expects him to be in this offense. I think he's going to get the ball, but I don't know if I trust. I don't know if I trust that offense yet enough in the way to say for your fantasy teams you can get an RB1 from the Buffalo Bills offense. Jessica in the comments says, she says, Spence, we have time for Brown to get it together. This is preseason to work on things. And she's right. One of the things about Saturday after the game, everybody, including myself, everybody runs to Twitter and we have our hot takes or we have our observations of the game. And I do want to remind everybody it is preseason. So, last year, I believe the Bills were whitewashed in the game. I think they lost the game like 22-0 to the Lions or something. I don't know who it was, but it wasn't the Lions because we played them during the season. But we got slacked a couple times during the offseason. There's been years that the Patriots have won the Super Bowl with Tom Brady and got beat in the offseason. It means nothing. But I think it's important for those of us who watch the game in certain ways. I think it is important for us to look at what is being presented by the Buffalo Bills. And when you look at that offensive line, if you don't have concern, I tell you another area of concern. I'm going to ask Sal about it because you all know if I'm not the loudest and biggest supporter of Tremaine Edmonds over the last few years while he was a Buffalo Bill before he left, I don't know who else was louder. I love Tremaine Edmonds, and I made noise about it, and I made it very clear that I thought the Buffalo Bills were going to miss him at the middle linebacker position. And listen, I didn't see anything that made me feel like it. I'm gonna ask Sal about that. Y'all know how I feel. Sarah's in the comments telling me to be quiet because she's working on trading James Cook. My bad. I'll text Rick for you. I'll tell him that James Cook is the dude. He going Shout out to Tracy again. She says it's a huge loss about Tremaine Edmonds. It absolutely is. It absolutely is. So look, before we get, I'm gonna get right into it. I want to bring Sal in. I want to talk about the Tremaine Edmonds stuff. I want to talk about the little drama with Stefon Diggs, which it really is no drama. So before we get into it, I just got a couple of announcements really quickly, and then we'll get right to it. Let's get it. Bills Mafia is back. Are you ready for it? The third annual Buffalo Rumblings IPA beer release party is going down September 16th, 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. at the Resurgence Brewing Company located downtown at 55 Chicago Street. I'm going to tell you what, you do not want to miss this event. Come out and hang with Joe, Sarah, and the rest of the Buffalo Rumblings crew for the Megapod. You're going to want to bring your questions and be a part of the live stream. Get involved. It's going to be live. And this year, we're also going to have our friends from Fans of Buffalo joining the party and sponsoring the fun. They're going to be in the house to provide you with all the information you need to make your away game day experience the easiest and the most smooth that you've ever had in your life. I can promise you, they do their job very well. So make sure you make it out Saturday, September 16th, 6 p.m., Resurgence Brewing Company, 55 Chicago Street. Go Bills. Hey, football fans, the season is here. So you know that means family, football, and food. But for the NFL's best fan base, it can't be just any food. Bills Mafia only eats the best during the season. And the best is Picasso's Pizza. With 4 great locations in Western New York, it's so easy to treat yourself to the most flavorful pizza on game day. Picasso's. We are Buffalo Pizza, shipping local and nationwide. Order online at picassospizza.net. And ladies and gentlemen, there he is. Here he is, the man, the myth and legend himself, Mr. Sal Capaccio. What's going on, sir?
How are you? Good to join you. Not a myth, not a legend. I try to be a man sometimes, but my son, he beats me up a little bit, so he becomes a little bit more manly sometimes, I guess.
Yeah, you're a wrestling fan, which was news to me.
No,
right?
I'm not. No,
I'm not a wrestling fan.
No, I watched wrestling when I was a kid. I don't know who told you that. I don't really watch wrestling ever.
I feel like I saw a post, and it wasn't even part of my preparation. It was something that I feel like I saw that you interacted with, which made me bring it up when you just said that he beat you up, because I was going to actually ask, well, who's his, maybe, you know what, maybe I'm thinking about Matt or something with like WrestleMania or whatever. It's cool.
Probably. No, I will tell you, when I was a kid growing up, I was a big Jimmy Superfly Snuka fan, and I watched Piper's Pit and all those kinds of things. But I lost touch with wrestling many, many years ago. My son knows a few wrestlers, but we definitely do not really watch it in the house. Like, not that I'm against it or anything like that. It just,
Yeah.
it just consumes too much time with all the other stuff we do.
I don't know what post that was, but it's okay. I'll find it because it was actually
Probably another bald guy in the media. It's okay. It happens sometimes.
no, I pretty much I put it to Sal though, but it's all good, man. Listen, we're in the thick of things. Like it's happening now. Like the fan base is going crazy. We got media going crazy. We got the season is right around the corner. So let's jump right into it, man.
Yeah.
Just from the game Saturday. One of the things that concerned me the most, and I'm gonna jump right into it because you know how big of a fan and supporter I was of Tremaine Edmonds, and it is preseason, so I don't want to overreact. But it's clear that middle linebacker is a position that we're going to have to improve at some point over the course of the season. What are your thoughts? I did read your arrows up and down, but what are your thoughts as far as the middle linebacker position and what we saw for the defense?
Well, obviously, it's an area that is concerning right now that, they haven't really had somebody step up and be that man and take charge. And Eric Washington talked about this today. He had media availability before practice, and he was specifically asked, about, did you wish that somebody would have just stepped up and take charge? And he said, he was asked if he was disappointed if no one did that. And his answer was no, like, it's not a disappointment. He said, you can look at it two ways. We haven't really had somebody do that, but we also have guys that are competing and it's hard to separate. Right. So I think that's right. Yeah, there's been some times where I'm like, man, if they still had Tremaine Edmonds, maybe that play gets made. But look, the Bills knew that Tremaine Edmonds was probably going to be out of their price range. I think they made an offer and, or at least we're staying in contact from what I know. And, it just wasn't going to work out. And that was probably something they had prepared for. I think that what most fans are a little upset about is that they didn't do something else about it. But look, from a team standpoint, I try to look at, well, what was the team thinking? They had Tyrell Dodson in this organization who's still a young player who's already started middle. He's already started weak side. And they figure, hey, he knows the system. He's been here. He's had to start games for us. And we've won games where he started. They drafted Terrell Bernard last year in the 3rd round thinking, okay, this is a guy that's going to take a leap in his 2nd year. He's in the system. He knows it. Unfortunately, obviously, he's been hurt. And they have AJ Klein, who always kind of felt to me like a break class in case of emergency guy. He's been with McDermott for a very long time, going back to their Carolina days. Unfortunately, it seems like they are in the break glass in case of emergency type mode, though, Spence, because maybe it's AJ Klein. Look, I think at the end of the day, maybe he's not out there week 1 and starting because he's still recovering from the hamstring injury. But maybe Terrell Bernard ultimately is the guy that winds up playing and being your primary middle linebacker. It just doesn't maybe happen week 1 because of the injury. We'll see.
It was just, and I'm sure to most Bills fans, it was just concerning because there were certain plays where, like you mentioned, and it's going to happen, and it always happens whenever you lose a free agent, that hindsight is like, man, if Tremaine was here, he probably would have made that play. There was some conversation outside of the middle linebacker position. Do you think that our safeties now, it's no secret that they're both older, and we got Jordan back on the contract, almost really at the last hour, it seems like. But do you feel like our safeties are slowing down at all? It seemed like the one play that the running back kind of sped past everybody brought a lot of criticism for Jordan.
Well, look, Jordan's never been a speedster, right? I mean, he's a great athlete. He's never been super fast guy. I think he took a bit of a poor angle on that one. He just got caught. And, he got beat, and guys are getting older and they're not going to be as fast as they get older. But, the advantage of having these safeties is they know this defense inside and out. They're still tough as nails and they're still very good athletes. But yeah, I think as you get older, that's always going to start to happen and start to creep in. I think it showed itself a little bit more in that play because he was the kind of the last line of defense and he was coming up to make a play in the hole and didn't take a great angle. If you look at that play too, I think the Steelers did a good job of outflanking the Bills. Micah Hyde actually came down into the box because he saw a strong side on the other way, which would have been the defensive left, offensive right. And then they brought motion that way, which took another guy, Taron Johnson, away from the play. It was really 4-on-3 blocking. So, those things are probably things that don't necessarily happen when you're game planning for a regular season game and say, hey, when they get this look, this is what we're going to do. That's not an excuse whatsoever. And to answer your question, yeah, they're getting older. They're not going to be as fast or as athletic as they get older. I still think they're both really, really good. And I think most teams in the league would love to have a Micah Hyde and or a Jordan Poyer starting for them at safety. So, you gotta take some of those things as they're going to happen sometimes as two guys who are getting a little bit older. But I think the positives and good still will far and outweigh the negatives and bad.
Yeah, and like you mentioned at first, I didn't never look at Jordan as a speedster anyway to make those type of plays that I think it was a bad angle, and I think he just he just missed it that one time. I don't go into the season thinking that now it's a weakness. I still look at the safety position as a strength for this team, having Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer. Let's talk a little bit about the defensive line. I know obviously the question that everybody has about Von, I tend to answer that question by saying that I just don't think he's going to be healthy. I'm not a doctor and I'm not the team, so I can't say. But as much as the team has kind of let anything be known, how are you feeling going into the season now? It's a couple weeks left. Do you feel like he starts on PUP list, or do you feel like, hey, they might actually feel like he's close enough to where they activate him and we were going with this thing with Von?
Well, I think there's a difference between he's healthy or not healthy versus he's active or not active. If they keep him on PUP, it doesn't mean he's not healthy. They may just want a little extra time because, look, he is an older player as well. This is a marathon, not a sprint. You want to have him completely ready, healthy, and not banged up when you're playing your most important games in December and January and hopefully into February. I think the way this is sounding, the way it's looking, the way it's always looked to me is, especially because of the numbers they have, that he probably starts on PUP, but I don't know. I mean, that hasn't been told to us. I do know that it's a discussion. I do know that there's not a concrete answer here right now, and they're still working through it. This isn't something that is, they're keeping all their secrets under wrap, and they know exactly what's going to happen. They may have an idea, but look, Spence, I mean, today he was out there with pads on. I mean, like practice pants pads.
Mm-hmm.
Can't practice. If he practices, they have to take him off PUP. That's the rule. You can't step foot on in actual practice. He can walk around like he was. He can't take part in any drills, individual, nothing like that. But he was wearing his practice pants with pads in them for the first time. And to me, that's a sign that he's getting ready to get the feel of that again, right? So just because, though, he isn't active or on the active roster, the 53 as of next Tuesday, doesn't mean he's not healthy. And here's what I mean. So think of it this way, too. The Bills, let's say they say, okay, we're going to have him active and ready week 1, even though he's not going to play that much. We'll have him practicing because, remember, he can't practice either unless he's on the active roster. If he's on PUP, he can't practice. Right. So let's just say they put him on the active roster. They say, we're going to take him off PUP, counts on the 53. Won't play that much week 1. We'll keep him on a pitch count, ramp out a little more week 2, a little more week 3, kind of let him go. Well, the problem with that is what's the numbers look like at defensive end? Because if you have that philosophy and then someone gets banged up, Greg Rousseau, Leonard Floyd, well, guess who's got to play more than you wanted? That's going to be Von Miller. So I think that's the trick in the game that they're trying to balance and weigh, which is, he's healthy. We don't want to put a ton on his plate until he ramps up a little bit. He's done none of this conditioning. He hasn't been in training camp. But I don't know how much they really want to be able to put him in that position to have to play a lot in case something were to happen to somebody else if they do make him active.
Okay. And then and talking injuries, because you just talked about if somebody gets banged up, and obviously we all want to see Von. Let's flip it to the other side now, to the offensive line. There are injuries now that we have some concerns with the tackle position. I feel like obviously we were a little concerned anyway. We had a surprise retirement, which took away some of our depth. Now we have an injury in a preseason game that took him out for the season. So what do you envision the Buffalo Bills doing about our depth position along the offensive line? And then even to, I guess, as a follow-up question to that, even with the performance that we had, if we had the depth, do you think the Bills are happy? Because, I think there was a rough performance when you look at what we did see as far as the offensive line with the Bills this past Saturday. So just overall, how can we kind of go into the season fixing it? And then also, just in general, the overall play of it, are we happy with that, even if we had the depth?
No, I don't think they played very well on Saturday. Those things are going to happen. Look, I mean, being down on the field, I'll tell you, the Steelers, I mean, they were energetic. They were ready. Let's remember that's their only home preseason game of the year. It's against a Super Bowl caliber favorite type of team in the Buffalo Bills, a team that crushed them a year ago. I think the Steelers wanted to have a good showing, and I think they came out and they were ready to play. I don't think the Bills were, quite frankly, as much. And that's not an excuse. They should have been. Anytime you step on the football field, you should be ready to play. But I do think they had an energy and an intensity and a purpose that the Bills did not have that, is disappointing, but in some ways a little bit understandable, at least from the Steelers side, the way they approached the game. That said, I think all that added up to a pretty poor performance by pretty much the entire offensive line. I guess you could say it's Osiris Torrance looks pretty good. They weren't that bad in the interior, but on the outsides, we know that Spencer Brown had some problems. He had a few penalties. One of them shouldn't have been a penalty. The block in the back to me was an egregious call. Should not have been a penalty, but he didn't play well enough anyway. He had a couple penalties. Look, Brandon Shell probably would have made the team, but I don't think it was 100% certain. He was a nice backup depth piece to have, but I'm not even positive he was going to be the main backup. Tommy Doyle's different. I think Tommy Doyle would have been a really nice piece to have because he's a tackle, he's a guard. Remember, he tore his ACL last year playing guard because he was filling in for so many guys in that Miami game. I mean, so I think that's a significant loss, obviously, as far as the depth. But they still have their starters. Right tackle Spencer Brown, left tackle Deion Dawkins. They really like Ryan Vandermark, I think. Ryan Vandermark was an undrafted free agent by the Colts a year ago. He was waived at the end of camp, and the Bills claimed him. He's been in their system for a year. He's worked with Aaron Cromer for a year. I think Ryan Vandermark suddenly becomes your backup swing tackle, essentially. I think that's what's going to wind up happening here. And they still have David Questenberry. Now, he's an average type player. You can get by with him in spot duty. He's not a guy you're going to rely on for 17 games. He was actually the guy that got beat when Josh got hurt against the Jets, not blaming him, but that's, if people remember, he's not going to be a guy that's going to be shutting down, the best edge rushers in the league, but he's a guy that's put a lot of time in this league and he'll be able to start. So you have him. I think what they're also going to do, Spence, is I think they're going to look at the waiver wire next Tuesday as soon as all these guys are released, see who shakes free. I mean, you think about it, it's only one cut down day this year. So you go from 90 to 53 all around the league. That's like 300 players who are going to be available, essentially, in theory, at the same time. Out of those, I think the Bills are looking at tackles and saying, who can we bring in here that can upgrade our depth and, go from there. There is one other option. It's not the best option, but at least they do have some flexibility even on the outside with Ryan Bates. Ryan Bates, the fact that Osiris Torrance has looked so good, I think means he starts at guard, and that really allows you to have Ryan Bates as your backup interior guy. But he can play tackle. He did it in camp and preseason, never in a regular season game, but at least that's an option you have if you really need in a pinch to have somebody.
Shout out to the guys over at Cover One. I know you and Eric now do your guide to the Gridiron show. If those listening by podcast or those watching vidcast, if you haven't checked out the guide to the Gridiron pod that Sal and Eric do, it's phenomenal. So please check that out. But I bring that up to say Greg from Cover One has been championing. I can't talk today, but he's been pushing this possible trade. How do you feel about the possibility of Josh Jones from Arizona? He's an early draft pick that doesn't look like he's going to start. He's a starting caliber tackle. Do you feel that there's a possibility that they might actually trade for somebody? I agree with you. I think the waiver wire is probably the way to go, so you don't have to use assets. But how do you feel about something like this?
Yeah, absolutely. I think anytime, Brandon Beane, he's made trades before. I think I wouldn't discount them trading for a right tackle or trading for a middle linebacker, to be quite honest with you. I think the Bills even have guys on their roster that maybe, we'll see. Can they keep all these defensive ends? I mean, can you see them keeping Boogie Basham and Shaq Lawson and JJ Panessa and all those guys, especially with Vaughn? What about Khalil Shakir? Where does he fit in? I mean, there might be guys who have a little bit of trade value on the Bills side if you want to flip them and try to flip them for a player instead of a draft pick. Yeah, I saw about Josh Jones. I saw somebody in the national media reporting on him a few days ago about it and saying, though, he's a younger player and he's not going to start, so he'd probably be available. So sure, I think that's an option that, has been out there that, you can look at, but what's the compensation? What are you looking at? There's a lot of different things that go into that, but certainly I wouldn't rule it out with Brandon Beane. I mean, he's a guy that swung deals before, and he especially would try to take guys that he feels he'll try to take guys that aren't going to make his own team to try to flip them for something. He's done that. I mean, the guy got a draft pick for Russell Bodine a few years ago from the New England Patriots, right? I mean, Now granted, they also traded away Wyatt Teller. We know that. I mean, it hasn't always worked out. But yeah, sure. I don't think it's just a waiver wire. It wasn't, that's not the only way I think, but I think that is probably the first option when it comes to Tuesday is let's see who's available. Let's see who's out there that they don't have to give an asset up for. PJ in the chat says, well, the Bills are at the bottom of the waiver wire though. Yeah, that's true. But I mean, all the teams above them aren't just going to be claiming every single guy on the waiver wire, right? I mean, like most teams aren't going to claim many people at all because you're going to want to get your own players back for your practice squad and things like that. But I mean, all you can do is put a claim in. I mean, they'll look and if there's a guy that fits, they'll put a claim in.
And like you said, it's you got 32 teams. Not everybody. Some teams might go into the season right now saying, "Hey, no, we're good with our 53 that we took out of camp." Some might be like the Bills, where you need just a couple extra pieces. So that's where you play the waiver wire. Not everybody's looking for a right tackle or a left tackle or anything like that. So I think the Bills have a shot at getting somebody if they're targeting them on the waiver wire, as well as trade like Sal and I were just talking about. Arrow up, man. Gabe Davis. I've been heavy on him. I've like last season, the drops, and I know he had the ankle injury, so it just depends on what side of the conversation you fall on. But this past Saturday, man, he looked like the Gabe Davis that Bills fans were excited to see last season.
Yeah, my wife and son were at the game, and
Mhm.
it's one of the first things she said. She was like, "Man, they didn't play well." Then she goes, "Gabe played really well." I mean, like,
Yeah.
yeah, right. I mean, like, so yeah, it kind of jumped off. Gabe, he's been real strong. He's been real strong ever since camp began. I think he's had a solid camp. You know, uh, he's going into a contract year, and I'm not suggesting that because he's going into his contract year, but
Mhm.
obviously it's important for him to have a big year. And the Bills, obviously, they're going to have a decision to make at some point, whether that's soon or later, or whatever, on Gabe Davis. But I think that ankle injury last year certainly impacted him for most of the year. He tried his best to fight through it, and you could tell he was kind of bothered by it through a lot of the year. And sure, the drops, they've been talked about. I did a story on this. Speaking of cover one, Eric Turner, provided some real good context with some stats, and I used those in my story about I don't know, a couple months ago. And one of the things you have to consider with Gabe is he does run like the average depth of target in the league. He's runs the furthest. It's harder to catch balls further downfield, especially in colder weather and nastier
Mhm.
weather once the weather turns in Buffalo. So you're talking about a guy who, most of his targets are pretty far down the field, and those are just harder balls to complete sometimes. Not saying he should have had a few of them. He should have. But I think Gabe Davis is a really, really good player. He does a lot. He's a good blocker. I think they'll take some off his plate this year by having Trent Sherfield, who I think is a really excellent blocker as well, who will be able to fill that void a little bit, allow Gabe to concentrate more on just the route running and catching and receiving and catching part of it. I think you're going to design some things for him to be able to do that. But I really like Gabe Davis so far in camp and preseason.
I was actually a little not down on the decision making, but I thought that they could have done more. And now the more that I see of Dawson Kincaid, I'd take that opinion back. How positive are you about Kincaid going into this? I think the kid is phenomenal. I think he looks great, man.
Yeah, I mean, I'm to the point where don't play him Saturday. Keep him as healthy as possible because
Yeah,
he should be treated like you treat Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs. And that's how important I think he is. I really do.
yeah.
I'm not being hyperbolic here. I mean, I understand he's a rookie, and that's not normal Sean McDermott operates, but he's so important to this offense and what he can do. I mean, take a look at those catches he had on Saturday. I mean, the fact is you cannot cover him with a linebacker. You just can't. And if there's a
Yeah.
matchup where he's on a linebacker, the Josh Allen's going to throw it to him. He's going to make the catch and he's going to get yards after catch. He's so smooth. He had another one at practice today. I mean, Josh threw a ball basically down the seam, and he just so smoothly just reaches out, grabs it, and just stays on his path. Bam, gets upfield, scores a touchdown. It was just an excellent play. I think Dalton Kincaid is every bit as advertised of what we had heard he was coming out of the draft, which is not the best pass catching tight end, the best pass catcher in the draft, right? The guy of all the pass catchers with the hands, the best pass catcher, including wide receivers. And we're talking about Ashton Smith and Jigba and Zay Flowers
Mhm.
and all those guys. This guy was considered by many the best pass catcher. And I think that's exactly what it is. And we've already seen this preseason. They've been ramping up that 12 personnel that we talk so much about. And I do think it's going to be a really, really big part of their identity this year with him and Dawson Knox.
It's incredible to watch. And Matt here speaks about the body of work that Kincaid brought, and then PJ talks about how the chemistry between he and Josh Allen is already there. And that's the part that's impressive to me, is that, like you mentioned, Sean McDermott, typically we don't see rookies get that type of playing time and stuff. But I really think this season, at least just based off of what I've seen, I look at the way Josh Allen throws the ball to Kincaid the same way that I look at him throwing it to Diggs. I just think that it's part of that offense now that, me and Jeremy Poyer actually got into a little debate about it, because I think he's going to, I think he might be the second or third leading receiver on the team this year. I know Gabe Davis is in the contract year, and I know now this is just all like, well, what ifs and what can't happen. But I think Kincaid is that important. And it almost sounds like you almost agree with that he's going to be that important to the offense. I think he's going to be one of the top target
Well,
getters.
I think at the end of the day, like let's just say we've talked about this on WGR. My co-host Joe DiBiase and I, we've kind of debated this back and forth going back a couple of months now, which is if I asked you just to take guys from in the slot, if they lined up in the slot, the number of targets they get this year, who would be number one? I think it's Dalton Kincaid. I think Dalton Kincaid winds up with more targets out of the slot than any other player on the Bills winds up total. I don't know if that means the third most targets on the team. I mean, because you're going to have guys moving around a little bit, but I think that's how important he is, that he'll be in the slot. He'll be creating that mismatch. You're going to have to either put a linebacker or a DB on him. If it's a linebacker, I think you just can't cover him. If it's a DB, he's going to have the size advantage on him. And then you're going to have a light box the Bills can run in. And that's the whole point of having him. It's the whole point of having 12 personnel, which is you're going to have to make a decision. Pick your poison on defense. And if you want to go light and put a DB, a nickel DB on him, then it's going to be a light box for the Bills to run into what James Cook was facing. If you want to go with a linebacker, then we're just going to beat you with Dalton Kincaid running at a linebacker, or maybe Dawson Knox running at a linebacker because you decided to, do it the other way. So yeah, I think he's really important. I do think that he's going to have a lot of targets. I think he's in line for a much bigger type of year than most rookie tight ends have. It's, as you know, a tough position to translate. A lot of tight ends come in the league. They don't do well their first year. Usually takes a few years. I'll give you something though. You might already know this. Do you know what the rookie tight end reception is for the Buffalo Bills all time? The most receptions a tight end in his rookie year has ever had for the Bills.
I want to say something low 50s, maybe.
Probably only 38.
Oh, he's gonna kill that record.
He's right. You'd think he would. Yeah. I mean, that's incredible. I don't know. I haven't gone through every team. I would think that most teams, Spence, would have a rookie throughout their history that had more than that as a tight end, but that's all for the Buffalo Bills, which is incredible. And I think that I know. So I think that and they haven't had anybody really. Dawson had in the 30s a couple of years ago, his rookie year a few years ago, but generally it's been since the 80s that really had anybody like that. I mean, Charles Clay came in and had some, and I'm talking just overall. Charles Clay was targeted a lot in tight end, but they haven't really had that particular feature in their offense. And Dawson has kind of ramped it up in the last few years, but I think right away as an impact rookie, Kincaid's going to be something like the Bills have not had in a long, long time.
Man, I'm excited to see it. Two more questions and then we'll get on out of here. So you mentioned the running backs. You talked about James Cook, and week one in the preseason, I felt like obviously the offense looked good. So it was easy to say like, oh, James Cook is going to be a huge part of this offense. He's going to look great. But then we turn around and then we sign another running back who I don't think he's on the level of, he's not going to threaten the number one or the RB1 position. He's not doing that. But we signed another running back. Can you kind of provide just some insight as to why you feel like that move was important for the Bills to make?
Who are we talking about? Ty Johnson?
Ty.
Well, I think a couple of things here. I think, first of all, third preseason game, you're probably not going to play James Cook. You don't want to do that. Damian Harris is coming off an injury. Do you really want a 33-year-old Latavius Murray out there either? I think they needed bodies, to be quite honest with you. I think they need bodies. It's to get them through a game. But here's the advantage. Whether it's him or Deshaun White, who they just signed as well as a linebacker. And by the way, I was thinking, man, why do they need a linebacker? Well, I go out there today, Dorian Williams wasn't practicing. That's why they need another linebacker. You need bodies. You got to get through this third preseason game to make sure that the guys you don't want to play don't have to play. But the advantage of doing it too is you bring in a guy now, you get a look at him and he learns your playbook for about a week. If you have to actually go get someone later in the year, you got that guy on speed dial. You've already had him. You had a look at him. Maybe you don't like him. You don't call him, but that's the advantage of doing it now. It's also like when people see, just something to remember for all your listeners and all your viewers here, Spence, which is how many times have you seen throughout a week, oh my God, the Bills are working out this position. What does that mean? It doesn't mean anything. All they're doing, that they cycle in, they work guys out because you do it now. So that if something does happen later in the year, you don't have to go through working them out then. You already got them. You saw them. They know you. You talk to them. You have your pick. That's why you get guys like this now. My guess is Ty Johnson is here to help them get through Saturday and basically to make sure that they have a guy that they can turn to and call that has a bit of a knowledge of the playbook later on in the season if they do need somebody, even for practice squad.
Yeah. And he's a talented guy. I think that's exactly what they're doing. I think even you see this throughout the season, like you mentioned, like last year, there were times that we would bring in a guy that was a left guard, and then we wouldn't sign him. And then just late in the season, if an injury happens, you just, like Sal said, you just want to have somebody on speed dial. Perfect explanation. My man John says in the comments that he's been listening to comments as of late with the player interviews. We're going to be tempo with the group that goes from 12 to 10 in the same drive. Good luck with that. I think the offense is going to be scary. And then this is a great segue to kind of my final question here. I've seen enough from Josh. Obviously, he's not going to play Saturday, but I've seen enough from Josh Allen in the moments that we did get to see from him over Saturday.
Play Saturday?
I
don't think he will. I just want to say, I don't want to be fearful. I was on WGR today, and they're like, "What's going to happen?" I'm like, I don't know. Like, could you see Sean McDermott going, "Hey, man, we did not look good last week. We need to make sure we're buttoned up, and I need these guys to play." I'm not predicting that's going to happen. I have no idea, Spence. Honestly, I'm not. I'm just telling you, I wouldn't completely close the door on that.
Man, Bills Mafia would lose their minds.
I mean, teams are playing. Aaron Rodgers is playing this week. Teams are playing their starters this week. Let's remember, there is 2 weeks between this and the first regular season game. This would typically be the week starters would play when you have 4 preseason games.
Yeah, it would. But see, I guess my question, because to me, even though the offense didn't quite look good and we didn't move Josh did, and I feel like the decision making that we saw from Josh, I think the one question was the scramble where he kind of ran around too much. It's like, Josh, it's preseason, man. Just get down. But overall, I think Josh looked sharp. I think he was decisive to throw to Gabe Davis that got called back. I think he looked amazing. So I'm hoping we don't see Josh Allen this weekend.
I'm hoping too. And in fact, I'll say this. Matt Barkley didn't practice today. He has an elbow injury.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you I don't think you want to have Josh Allen out there anyway. Any bump or bruise, then you got one quarterback left in your roster, right? I mean, you don't want that either. It goes back to the same thing I talked about with Von Miller. Like, if you want to rest a guy, like, you got to make sure that he's ready to go. It's like a couple weeks ago. So Taron Johnson doesn't play in the first preseason game, and everybody's like, "Oh, Taron Johnson." That just goes to show you how much they think of him, which is true. But the biggest reason he didn't play is because Cam Lewis was hurt. Like, you already have one of your backup nickels hurt. You can't get your starting nickel hurt, so you got to make sure that you keep as many guys healthy as possible. So yeah, I think that I don't think Josh is going to play. I don't know though. We'll wait to hear from Sean McDermott on Friday. That's when he speaks to the media to let us know.
Okay, well, that last question, because I was going to...
I'm sorry, Thursday he speaks to the media, sorry.
Thursday. Okay. So I was going to say, I think the offense looks, even though, the blocking and everything, I think Josh looks incredible. So what I was going to ask you is there a possibility, and Jessica kind of alluded to this here in this question here, do we think Andy Isabella sneaks onto this roster? Like, is he the guy that sneaks on this year? I know Bills Mafia, every year we have a Christian Wade or a Duke Williams or somebody that we fall in love with. But I was excited about Andy Isabella when he came in for the workout. I think his speed and just certain things that he does can fit what Josh Allen's talent is. How do you see him sneaking onto this roster at all? Please say yes.
I have gone back and forth on this a lot. I did a projected 53 myself, which I didn't put out there publicly. And I have him on my roster because I'm trying to get him on too. I think that he's done a lot and enough to justify it. By the way, Jessica Tennis. I'm guessing that's not Jessica's last name, but it might be. But I'm thinking, Jessica Pagula was at practice today. Is this Jessica? Maybe Jessica was asking this question. Jessica Tennis, right? I mean, I love it.
That would be perfect.
I love it. Thank you, Jessica. Maybe it is your last name, or maybe you just are really good or love tennis. I don't really know. I mean, I guess I could be. When I was a kid, so here's a quick story. So when I was a kid, I played Cheektowaga Little Loop football. Okay. And they had jackets for all the kids, and they had jackets for the football players. They had jackets for the cheerleaders, and you'd sell candy bars and things like that for a fundraiser, and you get a jacket and all that kind of stuff. So what they did was they put either football or cheerleading and then your name. So you'd say football in your name or cheerleader in your name. So mine said Football Sal. So for like 2 years, I walked around with people calling me Football Sal when I was like in 6th grade, because that's what it said on my jacket, Football Sal. So there you go. So Jessica Tennis. I love it. All right. So anyway,
we got to update your name. That's your new name now.
I know, right? That should have been my Twitter name. I want Sal Sports. Should have been Football Sal, but I like to talk about all sports. So anyway, I digress. I'm sorry. I'm taking away from your show.
It's all good. No, it's all good. I love the random stories. Those work.
This is why I do radio. I just talk too much. So, I really think he can make the team. He's obviously got to play special teams to answer Jessica's question. Can he play? He's a return man. I mean, that's what he does. He was a kickoff return man on Saturday. He can be a punt return man. The issue I have is when I try to do this, and you bring up Justin Shorter as well, Jessica, which is, can you justify having the same kind of guy, the duplicate, enough times, right? Which is Deontay Hardy and Andy Isabella are kind of the same player in a lot of ways. They're small, they're return men. They're not that big, they're fast. And then what about Khalil Shakir? I think Khalil Shakir is super interesting. So, I mean, all things being equal, I would say keep Isabella, waive Shakir. Are you ready to just lose Khalil Shakir? Because if you waive him, he's getting claimed. You're not getting him back in the practice squad. He hasn't been in the league 4 years. Someone's taking him. That's why I say, could you think that maybe about trading him? Would someone take something? Would take him and give you something? I don't know. I'm just trying to figure out the way to do it, because the same thing with Justin Shorter. If they waive Justin Shorter, there's a pretty good chance someone's going to claim him. It doesn't have to be. They can get him back in the practice squad maybe, but if someone claims him, you don't get him back, and that's a wasted 5th-round pick for a guy that you really felt could come in here and be your new Jay Kumaro maybe, as a wide receiver and a gunner on special teams. So I think it's close. I think it's tough. What do we know? We know it's going to be Diggs, Davis, Hardy, Sherfield. They are making the roster. You got to find 2 spots for Shakir, Shorter, and Isabella. And not to mention, by the way, I think Tyrell Shavers and Keyshawn Johnson have both looked really good, and they put Keyshawn Johnson back to return punts. I think this is a pretty deep room overall when you take everybody and think about who's going to be on the practice squad. I agree with you, Spence. Like, I would love to see Andy Isabella. I thought it was very telling what Sean McDermott said about him last week. If you pay attention, the way they talk about guys sometimes, like McDermott said, look, it's not like he's been in 4 teams and it hasn't worked out. He was with 1 team and it didn't work out there. So you go out and sign him and say, maybe it just was that fit. Maybe he can just be the best version of himself with us here in Buffalo. And I love that. I think that kind of sells me. And Sean McDermott didn't say this. I'll say it. It tells me maybe they just felt he was being used wrong in Arizona, and the Bills can figure out the better way to use him. And that's, and I think the Bills liked him coming out of college based on, the way Brandon Beane and Sean McDermott have talked about him.
Well, I think that's absolutely the case. I mean, I have season tickets out here to the Cardinals, and the offense that they were running, anybody who watched Kyler Murray in that offense, and it didn't work for even Hopkins. It just didn't work. So it is what it is. And so look, Sal, man, I thank you so much. Every time we get together, man, it's a pleasure. I absolutely appreciate it. Is there anything that you want to plug right now that you have coming up? I know the season's coming, so I know you have a ton of content coming out.
I mean, I think most people probably watching, listening, know where to find me, at Sal Sports on Twitter. Obviously, I'm on WGR 550 daily. I do the 10 to 12 show, but I'm always doing a morning hit with the morning guys. I'm doing an afternoon hit with the afternoon guys. But yes, I have this YouTube channel, Sal Sports on YouTube. It's just the same name as my Twitter feed. I've been really trying to grow that. That's where you'll find It's Always Game Day in Buffalo on the video version with myself and Matt Bove that we record. We put it out. It's an audio podcast as well. But the video version, you see our faces and you can do it. But I got some really cool stuff planned that I can't really kind of talk about right now that's going to be happening on the YouTube channel. I'm getting close to 5,000 subscribers because I kind of just relaunched it recently. And, it's nice to see those numbers grow. So go to the YouTube channel, subscribe to Sal Sports. You got the Guide to the Gridiron with Eric Turner and me. You got It's Always Game Day in Buffalo. You got different shorts that I put on there, and you got some other cool stuff that I got planned coming up as well.
Sal is the best, everybody. Make sure you follow him on all the socials. Check out the podcasts and all the articles and just everything that he has going on. It's the best. So last week I had Matt and Ryan. This week, Sal. Next week, we're going to have Nate Geary. So I'm trying to head into the season with some of the best here. So make sure you check all these guys out, the best of the best. Sal, thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, y'all know how we do it. Buffalo Rumblings. Y'all love each other. Take care of each other and live in peace.
Hey,
and as always,
put Geary on a time limit, okay? Put Geary on a time limit. Just put him on a buzzer. When the buzzer goes off, he's got to stop talking. He won't be able to do it.
He's long-winded, man. You gotta jump in. You gotta have a buzzer. You're right.
I didn't interrupt you. Thank you, my man.
No, you're good. You're good. And everybody, y'all know, as always, stay positive, test negative, go Bills.
Code of conduct.